What number am I thinking of? 69, dude. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles, you bastard. My name's John. His name is Andy. I wear the same shoes as everyone. I got the same blues as everyone. So try and call me. I'm a mobile man. Yes, I am. More on that later. But first, Andy, how are you today?
I am living the dream here, sir. How are you?
Yeah, fair to middling. So you got a tune for us to listen to?
Yeah, I do actually. We're going to be revisiting a band that we've listened to before on the channel just once. So I figured we are due for a second go round. The band is Local H. We had previously done the song named after one of your favorite artists of all time, Mr. Eddie Vedder, I believe was the name of the title. We checked
Oh,
that one
yes. Oh,
out.
a little bit
Um,
sick coming from just thinking about it, that name.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the song and everything to do with the
No,
title.
yes.
And so I figured I would bring one of their Eddie Vedder did well, but this was probably their most popular song that they've ever done. And it's off the same album. And that track is called Bound for the Floor. So, Local H, Bound for the Floor. Dust off your memory from your last listening experience and prep yourself because I'd love to hear what you have to say about this track.
Okay, well done. This, for those of us who've heard it before, you can't exactly describe it, but this just sounds like 90s American alternative, grungy, post-grungy, whatever kind of sound to it. It doesn't sound British. It does sound American. I can't tell you why, but it does. Yeah.
Born to be down. I've learned all my lessons before now. Born to be down. I think you'll get used to it, and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic, and you learn to accept it. You know you're so pathetic, and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic, and you learn to accept it. You know you're so pathetic, and you don't. When you don't. When you don't. When you don't. Born to be down.
Okay, that was really interesting. So your man comes in, singing away, 4-line. I got most of it. Surprise, surprise. We're just going to go back and listen to that bit again. Really nice sound, classic, totally suitable. And then it goes into this next bit, which I guess is either pre-chorus or chorus. We'll find out as the song develops. And he switches his delivery now to synchronize with the riff of the guitar. Which is a very pleasing technique. And it's really nice. And so they go through a couple of lines like that. And then in comes the sort of heavily distorted guitar, the classic sort of grungy, post-grungy sound. But they don't lean on it too heavily, and they sort of like do it for a bit, and then it drops back into what I presume is the next verse. So that must have been the chorus as a whole there. So it's really nice. Let's just it's about here somewhere. Let's go.
I've learned all my lessons before now. Born to be down. I think you'll get used to
got it. So you're saying about you just don't get it, you keep it copacetic. To accept it, it's pathetic. I would strongly suspect that he's got the line pathetic and then found copacetic to rhyme with it. A much harder rhyme if he says you just don't get it, you keep it hunky dory. That would be a much harder rhyme to go for it. But that's cool. That's really good. And I like the way. So there's this frustration about this acceptance situation, born to be down. Is sort of very laden. And then it goes into and you don't, and that's when the sort of like heavy distortion comes in, and it adds this sort of fuzziness, atmospheric wise as well as musically to it. And you wonder what the and you don't actually refers to. Interesting. While that's going on, to my ears, I don't know if it's just because of that, it made the drums really pop and they were sounding great through all that sort of fuggy guitar. And then we cut back out again. I guess the next verse. Let's see what happens.
I think that I've said this before now. Born to be down. What good is confidence? And you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you don't. And you don't. And you don't. And you don't. And you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you don't. And you don't.
Let me check it, choke.
And you don't. And you don't. And you don't. Don't get it. You keep it copacetic. And you don't. Accept it. You're so pathetic. And you don't. Don't get it. You keep
I like the bass.
pathetic. And you don't. Accept it. You're so pathetic. And you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You're so pathetic and you don't.
Nearly got it. Yeah, I really like that actually. I like the way they didn't lean too heavily into the grungy stuff. I don't know when this came out, but it's nothing I haven't heard before. But it was done really well, and I like the contrasts and actually the sort of more rhythmic riffing parts I found really catchy actually. Um, Yeah, I like the way he delivered it. I like the way they broke it down. You could tell they were about to come to something, and there was that sort of more chuggy sort of guitar riff, and the bass was sort of just moving, shifting around, keeping the pace going. That was really nice. Drums sounded excellent. Success. I think I enjoyed this quite a bit more than the Eddie Vedder one. Um, the title alone. But let's find out some more by going back, chopping up with Andy.
All right, bound for the floor, my ass. There you are in a chair. What did you make of this track by Local H?
Oh, interesting title. What could it refer to? Is it perhaps the adventures of a glass-jawed pugilist, or the fated destination of a trading company's ambitious intern, or the coming-of-age tale of a young boy gymnast from the northeast of England, a la Billy Elliot? It's got the vision of someone, I just want to do a forward roll. But no, it isn't. It's not that. So the opening guitar riff and that drum kick, coupled with the bass, is like a sort of classic bouquet. Um, one sniff, and even if I didn't already know, it would put this vintage primarily in the 90s,
Yeah.
um, with an American terroir. Um, for those who have quaffed this particular tipple before, it just is. I can't explain why, but it does sound of that time, and it does sound of that continent.
Mm.
And I can't break it down and say it's because of this and this, it just is. So there's a really pleasing rhythmic nature to the riff, which runs through a couple of times. And we do get a helpful big cymbal splash to indicate change. First verse, in fact. And he does these little splashes all the way through when it's like changing and changing up. It's quite nice. It's almost like a little ding ding, sort of like signal on the railway or whatever. But in comes your vocalist, thankfully not sounding like Mr. Vedder. And he opening gambit, Born to Be Down, which I thought was interesting. So I learned all my lessons before. Born to Be Down, I think you get used to it. So this kind of sets the flavour of the track, a sense of frustration, and also the sort of acceptance of the status quo, the situation they're in, but it's a antagonistic exception. So we get the chorus. Well, I think it's a chorus. I didn't know at the time, but it is, and it's kind of like a two-party chorus as well, or you could have a post-chorus. I don't know. But anyway, the singer begins for the next bit. He times his delivery to synchronize with the main guitar riff, and it's this, and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic, and you learn to accept it. You know it's so pathetic. So my sort of premise is he probably got the line pathetic and had to think of something to rhyme with it. And it's like, ha ha, copacetic, dude. It's quite Bill and Ted, isn't it? You
And I
know?
was just gonna say trepidatious because I know whenever
Yeah,
you hear that, you
yeah.
think of them. Yes.
What number am I thinking of? 69, dude. But yeah, I just thought it's funny because I mean, if you swapped it for another, you could say like you keep it hunky dory because that's a much more difficult line. I mean, story, glory, fucking Tory. None of these things are words you want to bring into the song. So yeah, but it just made me smile. It's great to hear that. I think that's inventive as well. It's cool. You don't hear it very often. And then the second half of the chorus, or whatever you want to call it, post chorus, it changes, and as he sings, "And you don't," and the heavy distortion kicks in on the guitar here. And what this does is it creates a foggy atmosphere, sort of nebulous in sound and in thought. It's like the verse and the first half of the song are fairly clear and incisive. This is the situation, this is what's happening. And then the phrase, "and you don't," it's quite interesting. I mean, maybe I'm overthinking it here, but it could be situational, as in this is your action, you don't do anything. Or it could be followed by ellipsis, implying a litany of actions that are not taken, and you don't, dot, dot, dot. And it's left unsaid. And that hazy distortion could reflect this inaction or of both deed and of thought. Just, popped into my head. I will also say at this point that, I mean, they're really good, the drums, but here there's something about when the distorted guitar comes in, it really makes the drums pop and they really sound great, like they're cutting through the fog. It's great. So we cut back to the clearer sound again. I'm on for the next four lines. He says something about the same thing again, brought me down. He said, I think I've said this before, but I didn't catch that. I write it down that bit. But I really like the contrast here, that they're not just leaning into that classic grunge sound, they bring it back and it's sort of clean. And I find the verse sound, the clean, the sound really catchy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we circle back into the chorus again. But this time, once it goes through to the second half, the distorted guitar hangs around. And as we go through to repeat the chorus again, the hand stays firmly on the tiller of distortion. We sail on through that. And then we drop out to a nice little break with another guitar motif. It's similar to the first, but this one is a little bit more fluid and chugging and less rhythmic. It's just and here in particular, I've not really mentioned it, but the bass does a really good job here of adding pace to this section.
Mm-hmm.
And the only do mantras repeated, and then the four lines of the chorus, and then the distorted guitars crash back in as you expect with a big wave, and as they do, and it repeats through again, the vocals rise to that 90s scream, that you expect, before then it cuts out back to that rhythmic riff to finish suddenly with aplomb, just like a rhythmic gymnastic stanza. Ta-da! So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It wasn't anything groundbreaking or amazing, but I thought it was really well done. I like the way they structured the song. It was catchy as hell. Really well done. Everything sounded on point. I much prefer this to the previous track. This was just tick more boxes for me. So yeah, it's a good one.
Excellent, man. I'm glad you liked it. There is something, and in a roundabout way, I think, not in a roundabout way, in a much more detailed way, you kind of underscored this, where it's just like, there is this idea of like, keep it simple, stupid, but it's so well done. It's so tastefully kept stupid, or kept simple, stupid, that it sounds better. It sounds loftier than what it is at its base value. You know what I mean? Like a few chords, a simple drum beat, the obvious bass work in there that, like, no ceilings were broken, or earth was shattered in the making of the song, and yet it was done so well that I think it's just wholly enjoyable and super accessible, even though it's not a pop song. You know what I mean? So there's like like mentality kind of injected into how it was constructed, but but it's also like this really simple, easy to package final product. I just think it's a really well written, well produced song that kind of takes something that's simple and lifts it up a bit. And I've always appreciated that about this track, and honestly this album as a whole. So yeah, we will touch on the band a bit. I'll try to focus on aspects of them and the album that we didn't touch too much on when we covered Eddie Vedder on the last episode devoted to Local H. But yes, they are an American rock band co-founded in 1990 in Zion, Illinois by guitarist and vocalist Scott Lucas, who has remained the band's sole consistent member following the departures of the early lineup's bassist and lead guitarist. Lucas and co-founding drummer Joe Daniels continued as an unorthodox two-piece. In 1994, the record labels, trying to capitalize on the popularity of grunge and alt-rock bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden, Local H caught the attention of Polydor Records, which was then in the process of merging with Island Records. Island released the band's debut studio album, Ham-Fisted, the following year, but it sold below expectations, and Island pressured the band's A&R rep, Joe Basso, to drop them. Instead, Basso pushed them into quickly recording a follow-up before Island could cancel their contract. So, like, just hurry up and get something out before you get the axe. Which is nice to have a A&R rep that is that, behind you,
Believes in you, yeah.
Yeah, they just move on to the next. They'll assign me to another band and I'll work on them. The ship has sailed on these guys. No, which is super cool. So ahead of the release of As Good as Dead, frontman Scott Lucas was informed by Island that the album needed to sell at least 100,000 copies for the band to remain with the label. So that's nice, little ultimatum. As Good as Dead was released on April 16th, 1996, following the lead single High Fiving Motherfucker, which failed to chart. Maybe the name had something to do with that. The band, however, found greater success with the album's second single, Bound for the Floor, which rose to number 5 on the U.S. Alternative Billboard chart and number 10 on the U.S. Hot Mainstream Rock Billboard chart, and propelled the album into selling over 320,000 copies. So take that, Island. As Good as Dead is a concept album about dead-end small-town life based on the band's origins in Zion, Illinois. And it produced 3 other singles. Aside from this one, the aforementioned High Fiving Motherfucker, Eddie Vedder, the song that we've covered on the channel, and another great song by them, maybe show up down the line, Fritz's Corner. So the latter two made the top 40 on the alternative and mainstream rock Billboard charts. It remains Local H's best-selling album to date. Encouraged by the unexpected success of As Good as Dead, Island Records greenlit a third album, Pack Up the Cats. Based on 13 reviews over at Album of the Year, the album sits at an aggregated score of 86 out of 100. Does As Good as Dead, not Pack Up the Cats. But speaking of Pack Up the Cats, there's a couple good tracks off that as well. So we might check those out at some point, or if someone out there offers up a suggestion from that album for us to check out. Upon its release, critics greeted As Good as Dead with generally positive reviews. In a 4-star review, AllMusic stated that with As Good as Dead, Local H stood apart from other rock bands signed in the wake of Nirvana, noting that in exploring the album's litany of bitterness over a life that's being wasted before your very eyes, frontman Scott Lucas was one of only a few artists who could approach the emotional resonance of Kurt Cobain. Similarly, New Noise magazine stated in a 5-star review that it was a mistake to lump Local H in the other bands signed in the wake of grunge, writing, As Good as Dead matches the sentiment of the era, but comes from a much more sincere place. Robert Christgau of The Village Voice awarded the album an A- rating and complimented the band for their isometric power, the sense of tremendous force bravely exerted against implacable reality. Sputnik Music deemed the album a wonderful slice of apathy and cynicism that's just as punk-oriented as it is grunge-oriented. In 2016, Stereogum's Michael Tedder penned an article celebrating 20 years of the album, and in it he wrote, On As Good as Dead, Lucas was holding tight to this rock and roll dreams because to hear him tell it, he didn't have as much else. Lucas and then drummer Joe Daniels hailed from a tiny Illinois town called Zion, famously for being home of not much of anything. It's got a nice nuclear power plant, Lucas once quipped to Spin in an interview. It's its own steadfastly unpretentious meat and potatoes way. As Good as Dead is a concept album about being stuck in a shitty small town where everyone wastes away the day getting wasted, like in Fritz's Corner. Talking about old days, the track Back in the Day. And on the album's biggest hit, feeling sorry for themselves, Bound for the Floor. A slice of alternative nation bubblegum that helped the album go gold. So, there you are, a synopsis about this interesting little concept album. Let me get into these lyrics. Born to be down. I've learned all my lessons before now. Born to be down. I think I'll get used to it. And you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You know it. You're so pathetic. And you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic and you learn to accept it. You know you're so pathetic, and you don't, and you don't, and you don't, and you don't. Born to be down. I think that I've said this before now. Born to be down. What good is confidence? And you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic. You learn to accept it, and you know you're so pathetic, and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic, and you learn to accept it. You know you're so pathetic, and you don't, and you don't, and you don't, and you don't, and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic, and you learn to accept it. And you know you're so pathetic, and that repeats several times, shouted, and you don't, 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 and you just don't get it. You keep it copacetic, and that bounces back and forth between those two lyrical bits, until the song eventually comes to an end. So yeah, interesting track, interesting band. This one album, Pack Up the Cast is pretty good, but this is one of the, I think, great albums of the 90s from my perspective. Certainly one of the ones from my youth that I really flocked to at the time, and still kind of joyfully go back to every now and again, and pop on from time to time. So thank you for giving this thing a go, John. I'm really glad you liked it.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of Bound for the Floor by Local H. Be interested to hear y'all's thoughts. If there's any other songs off this album or any other from their discography that we should check out, please feel free to drop it down in the comments field below. Or if you have any other suggestions, it doesn't have to be Local H. It could be Local J or K or what have you. Feel free to drop them down in the comments field as well. Love interacting with you guys. Love hearing from you guys. And if you haven't done so, please like, share, and or subscribe. Any and all of those things would go a long way in helping us at the channel, and we really do appreciate it. Only takes a couple moments out of your time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.